Do you believe data science will improve cybersecurity, or do you think will cyber attackers use data science to design and execute tougher attacks? How does one become a machine learning engineer? What really led you to becoming a machine learning engineering manager?
Did not do any courses in natural language processing, but we used it heavily in my previous role. And I got started on it by doing some Coursera courses, for example, right? By reading a few papers, for example, some papers on transformers. We have to understand that continuous learning is very important. We can never say that, oh, I have a college degree, now I'm just going to chill and work. And that's not going to happen.
Right.
The technology is changing. I currently work with VMware Carbon Black as an engineering manager.
Okay.
I lead a team of 6 data scientists. I worked with IBM Research for 4.5 years.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you, Raghav. So let's get started. Let's tell the audience what you do. So, Raghav, what is it that you do as part of your current role as a machine learning engineer? Let's talk about you and your career path. Let's get started there.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Priya, for having me. Yeah, I currently work with VMware Carbon Black as an engineering manager.
Okay.
I lead a team of 6 data scientists, and we are working on infusing machine learning into the Carbon Black product, which we have today. For people who are aware about cybersecurity industry, I think most of the things are currently running on top of rules because things have to run on the customer premise on sensors, and they have to be deployed on their devices. So we cannot deploy deep learning models off the bat because the challenge is that they have to be deployed on the sensor. So what we are doing is a more of a bottoms up approach. We are trying to see what can we do on the sensor, what can we do in terms of preventive measures, and what can we do in terms of post effect after something happens. How can we mitigate it? How can we help our SOC analysts address those issues? And in terms of my background, generally I am a statistician by education, by training,
Right.
and I've been doing working with Carbon Black for with VMware Carbon Black for 1.5 year almost now.
Very
And
cool.
before that, I was not in cybersecurity, but I was in a similar space. I worked with IBM Research for 4.5 years, and
Okay.
I was working in IT service management. Over there, it was
Okay.
more about managing operational risk and managing operational incidents, and over here it is more about security incidents, but the nature of the problem is very similar, that the data is very similar. Yeah.
Agreed. Very, very cool. Sounds good. So, for those of us who are watching, how does one become a machine learning engineer? What was your educational path like? What really led you to becoming a machine learning engineering manager?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I will answer it exactly the way I wrote it in my personal statement when I applied for University of Illinois.
Sure.
And it is like it's a Markov chain for people who understand statistics. We never know what direction to go. We always take a few steps, and after that, we eventually converge to what we really want to do. And for me, it was the same. I completed my undergrad in India in 2009,
Okay.
and my degree was in electronics and communication, which is, I would say, part of electrical engineering. Electronics and communication by itself is not very popular in the US as a branch.
Right.
And after that, I started working in a business consulting firm where I was working as an analytics specialist, and I started using the classical statistical packages like SAS, SPSS, R. From there, I used to work for a US healthcare customer where I trained some propensity models. So I think it was a process. I started with, I should say, looking at the data, doing SQL queries, working with Excel, and eventually it came to a stage where we have to give marketing recommendations, started logistic regression or tree based models without knowing what is happening underneath. I just knew that I have to call this package. I knew how to review the results. I
Right.
knew how to tune some parameters. I knew how to look at if the model is significant or not, but I did not have a lot of basic knowledge about it. And that always intrigued me. Like if I run a tree based model in R, if it doesn't work, what should I do to improve it? There were some of these questions which I was really intrigued about. Then I started looking for how can I get this knowledge, and I wanted to go for a master's in statistics. That is what motivated me to do it.
Got
And
it.
yeah, and I mean, I'm really glad I took that step because in my master's program, I think half of the courses were very theoretical, and I got to see how these things actually happen, and I think
Right.
I got an opportunity to build a strong foundation on top of which we can always learn on job. So
Right.
yeah, I think that was my journey as a machine learning engineer or as a data scientist. And eventually, after working for, I would say, including my experience in India, after working for 11 to 12 years, I decided to choose management path to see if I can actually compound the effect I can have
Of
instead of
course.
trying to do it on my own. If I can build a team and we can do it as a group. And yeah, I'm really proud of the group I have currently at VMware Carbon Black. We have been doing some great things.
Wow, that is super impressive. So, in your opinion, would you say that a degree from a well-reputed college is important, or would you say that learning from YouTube videos, from courses like Udemy or Coursera that's out there? So, what are your thoughts about a structured college degree? Is that really important in this job market to authenticate or to bring in validation that somebody possesses knowledge to go into machine learning, to go into cybersecurity, or whatever career path they may choose? What's your opinion on that?
That's a very good question. I think having a degree, yes, giving validation and giving you an edge in that sense, I think it does help a little bit from that aspect. But at the same time, if you are a motivated person, if you are self-driven, if you are motivated, and if what you want to do, I don't think you really need to say that I have to quit my job, go back to school,
Right,
because like for example, I did my all of my education in statistics during my master's degree.
right,
I did not do any courses in deep learning per se, right? But when I was working in my previous role, currently, as I told you, we are working more, focusing more on basics of statistics. But when in my previous role, we used a few deep learning models, a few language models. I did not do any courses in natural language processing, but we used it heavily in my previous role. And I got started on it by doing courses, by doing some Coursera courses, for example, right? And
right,
by reading a few papers, for example, some papers on transformers. So my point is, the field we are in and the day and the age we are in, we have to understand that continuous learning is very important. We can never say that, oh, I have a college degree, now I'm just going to chill and work, and that's not going to happen.
right.
Every year the technology is changing, and I think when I graduated from a master's in 2016, from that to now it has been 6 years.
Mhm.
I don't think people use LSTM as frequently as they used to back then. Back then, LSTM was kind of the coolest thing. But
Right,
it's just this change which happened in such a short period. It's amazing how technology is shifting every day, how new things are coming out, new research is coming out, and how easy it is to adapt that because of all these pre-built packages available in softwares. So
right,
yeah, I think we have to be learning continuously, and if we are self motivated, we can do it even without a degree.
right,
But people who are on the edge of whether I should go for a degree or not, I would say if your situation permits you, go for it, and you will be very glad you did, because once
right.
you have those basics clear, it does boost your resume also in terms of applying for jobs, but it also boosts your self confidence. Uh,
Agreed.
because when I was, as I said, when I was working in India, calling these packages, using SAS to train models, using SPSS, I always thought, how is this happening behind the scenes? And once I went through the degree program, that was crystal clear, and that was a very satisfying feeling. So yeah,
Very cool. Very
those are the
cool.
things.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight. So, let's say you have two candidates that you're reviewing, right? One has a degree from Stanford. He has a degree in, say, machine learning or computer science, statistics, whatever you may call. And then there's this other candidate who's gotten a bachelor's from a university that isn't as well reputed, maybe a state university, maybe a community college even, right? But they've taken advanced level courses in Coursera. So when you're evaluating these two candidates, would you say the person with the Stanford degree gets the interview call versus the other one? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't think it is fair to give a call to only the person from Stanford. I think everybody deserves an equal chance, right? So
Right.
of course,
And
if
of
you
course,
have
I want
not,
to caveat that by saying that this is not, I'm talking not about just like your decision for your team. Like I'm just talking in general.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
say if this is any HR personnel that's reviewing these resumes. What, in your opinion, what do you think, or do you think it even matters that somebody has a degree from Stanford, Harvard, or these Ivy Leagues versus somebody who hasn't had the chance, who maybe was not capable, or maybe in a financial sense, right? They didn't have enough money to even apply to these places. So how do we kind of bridge that gap? Your thoughts on like how do we view these two candidates?
Yeah, I think if somebody did not get a chance to do such a degree, but they have 8 courses or 10 courses from Coursera, that tells me that they are really, really motivated to get into this field. And it would
Right.
only be fair if they got a chance to at least put themselves out there and see if the interviewers like them. And, you know, in everywhere recruiting is done, at least what I'm aware of, there is always a panel. It's not like one person is making a decision. So if let's say one person is biased on basis of education and is fascinated because somebody went to Harvard, the chances are that other 5 people would evaluate the skills of the candidate irrespective of that. And ultimately whoever performs better on the interviews, they should get the spot. Again, I will say that
Yeah.
the person who actually went to a good school, who actually did the basics, for them they have a little bit of an edge. I will admit that. But at this but that edge is not because of, or it should not be because of that brand. It should be because of the knowledge of the basics. And many times these courses on Coursera or any or Udemy, all these platforms, I mean, I would not make this as a general comment for everything in computer science per se, but in statistics I would say that whenever we talk about machine learning,
Mhm.
the goal of these courses is to give you a start. The goal of
Right.
these courses is not to build your foundation. So the goal is to give you a start and enable you to apply yourself and apply pre-built things. So I think that sometimes makes a difference when you have to do things from scratch. So yeah, I think whoever, if somebody gets a start by doing multiple courses and then brushes on the basics on their own and is ultimately able to come out as a good candidate, I think they should have a fairly good chance to get anywhere.
I agree. I completely agree. I totally agree that even though a degree doesn't matter as much, the brand carries some value. But again, it also is pretty equal to those who seek education independently and make sure that they're keeping abreast of the new technology that's out there. So, absolutely agree with all that you've said so far. So, now that we've discussed the education side of things, my next question is, do you believe data science as a whole will improve or revolutionize cybersecurity? Or do you think will cyber attackers use data science to design and execute tougher attacks? What's your take on that? What's your take on data science and cybersecurity?
Okay, that's a good question. I think it is always a game, right? If you think
Right.
about it, one advancement. So generally, in bigger corporations, uh, executives or engineers, they don't have the luxury to change things unless they have to, because maintaining everything at the existing level is also a very, very significant amount of work. There are some red teams out there who are trying to actively breach their own company's product, who are
Oh,
trying to see if we can breach our product, then maybe we can fill that gap. But
right.
I think that the cyber criminals or the attackers from outside, while they are trying to do it for their own benefit, once there is a breach, let's say there is a breach at a company X, then everybody else who knows about that breach will fix that issue, will mitigate that issue, or will plug that hole on their side. So
Right.
I think everybody has to get smarter. The cyber criminals, they definitely have to get smarter, because now things are even going to be deployed instead of on premise, on cloud infrastructure. While one might argue that it can lead to a more attack surface, but at the same time, all these, now it's not only on the company. For example, if you are using an AWS infrastructure, it is on you to make sure that your system is secured, but it is also on AWS. So the
Agree.
responsibility of securing you is kind of divided. And if AWS is working with multiple customers,
Mhm.
even if I try to adapt or adopt the benefits from others or learn from others, AWS is definitely going to learn.
Right.
Uh, so I think in that sense, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science is the way to go, because there are these problems of alert fatigue, which which for some of the viewers who don't know the term, it
Right.
means that the rule-based systems generate so many alerts that it is almost impossible for a team of human beings or SOC analysts to review all of them. So machine learning is can help prioritize what needs to be reviewed. It can help suppress some of the false positives.
Mhm.
It can do all of that. So I think that is definitely the direction in which industry is going. And to borrow one of my colleagues' analogy, he said that there are these $5 range attacks which are happening more frequently than those big attacks which come out in the news, right?
Ah,
So
okay.
those smaller attacks which happen more frequently can definitely be mitigated by being a little bit more intelligent.
Agreed, agreed. Very, very interesting thoughts there. So, any new advancement in data science or any new advancement in AI that we should look out for or to look up to make sure that we're secure? Either this can be something that users on our end can use, or this can be a solution that enterprise and organizations like larger companies can use. In your opinion, what is a cool product, a cool solution, something that we can use? Could be something that
Uh,
VMware is making too.
yeah. So I think in terms of branding of these products, there are endpoint detection and response products, EDR.
Okay. Okay.
Then there are managed detection, MDR, and then there is XDR. So XDR is now the newest or the most comprehensive of all of these,
Got
because
it.
endpoint detection and response focuses only on endpoint, but
Right.
XDR focuses also on network. It also focuses on endpoint. It focuses on on all these dimensions.
Got it.
So and on top of that, if you combine it with customer behavior, customer usage, one is you have to prevent an attack coming from outside. The other is also to do something on the user behavior. Like for example, if you receive an email today in let's say in Gmail, and there is an executable in a zipped file,
Right.
it will not allow you to download it. It
Got it.
knows that if there is an executable within a zip file and you double click and open that,
Yep.
you are probably going to run a program.
Right.
And right. So I think these are the things. So for me, as a data scientist, as I said, I have always wanted to focus on the fundamentals, the basics, the
Mhm.
new and the cool stuff in terms of any new deep learning models or any new advancements. They are very, very exciting, but at the same time, in cybersecurity space, uh, it is more important to focus on the basics and focus on what are all the signals you can get. Your model might be comparatively simpler, but at the same time, if you focus on all the directions from which the attack can happen, that will serve you much better than using a more sophisticated machine learning model. So yeah, I think those are the things I would say should be focused on. All the dimensions where this can happen, focusing on the basics, building models bottoms up. As I said, that is pretty much the approach we are following, because we also have to keep in mind that it is going to be running on a sensor. We cannot run it in the cloud and provide recommendations. So it's a little bit of a different system than the YouTubes, the Facebooks of the world.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Very, very cool. Sounds good. So, with that said, hypothetically, if let's say you were hiring somebody for your team, what are the soft skills or technical skills that are necessary in this day and age?
Okay. Yeah, that I think is a very straightforward in my mind, at least.
Yeah.
I Within my team also, I say that there are four dimensions on which I like to measure success for
Mhm.
myself and for my team members, for everybody. The first dimension is business impact.
Okay.
So are you doing something which is going to be in the product in the next 6 months, in the next 8 months, in the next
Uh-huh.
12 months? Now, by saying this, I don't mean to discourage people who are doing cutting edge research and who are building solutions which will be out there in 4 years or three
Right.
years. But at the same time, software engineering industry is agile. Things are
Right.
changing. The hackers or the attackers are inventing new methods. So it is very important for you to be incremental, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is the first dimension, business impact. The second dimension is impact or data science impact, and I think
Got it.
that is very important for a data scientist. So first of all, you should be business driven. Secondly, your fundamentals of data science, of machine learning should be good. You should know how certain models work, how you can tweak those models to adapt them. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
if you call a package out of the box
Right.
and you use the inference method available from, let's say, scikit-learn, it might not scale in your scenario. You might have to do something else to make it scale for your use case. So if you understand the basics, the chances of you being able to do that improve significantly.
Got it.
So have a good understanding of the basics and foundations. Don't go for jargons or fancy keywords in your resume. Go for the basic stuff. Know your basics.
Okay.
And people who interview you, if they know what they're looking for, they will understand that people who can understand basics will be able to build on top of that. That is the
Makes
second thing.
sense.
The third thing is software engineering skills.
Right.
Now, it is very hard to say in today's world. In 2022, you cannot say that I'm just a data scientist, I focus on building models. You should
Yeah.
know how to deploy those to production. You should at least know how to make them in such a way that that a soft sorry excuse me you should know how to make them scalable. You should know how, even if there is a team available who is collaborating with you, you
Uh-huh.
should know that they can directly consume it in the spirit of agility.
Right.
So you have to have good software engineering skills. That is the third thing.
Makes
And
sense.
the fourth, yeah, and the fourth is, I would say, responsibility to others. Like if I interview somebody, I would want to see how many times do they use I build this versus we built this as a team. How many times do they, or are there any instances where they actually helped somebody else? Because that goes a long way in terms of building a team culture. You might be a
Absolutely.
rock star, you might be a rock star, but if you are not a team player, it becomes, and it is hard for other people to work with you or collaborate with you.
Right.
That will be a red flag in my opinion.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more with all of these points. I totally agree, especially given our situation at this day and age with the post-pandemic world where all of us are remote
Remote,
working
yeah,
virtually, and I collaboration and being that team player is important today more than ever.
yeah,
I completely agree. Thank you so much for all of these knowledge and insights. I'm sure all of the viewers that we're gonna broadcast it to, many of those are gonna be students, so they'll absolutely value these insights. Great. So I'm going back to one of the points that you had mentioned. I know that you had mentioned an example where in an email there could be an exe file and that could be flagged, right? So I recently read a paper from researchers who from Israel. They what they did is they actually analyzed a malware that's inside JPEG files. So recently there was an attack, I think about 3 weeks ago, in the dark web. There's a website called Biden Cash, and in that website there were about 1.2 million credit card details that were sold. It was actually given out for free. They were just advertising and telling people that you can take it. Do we have people's credit card information? So what we did, what the researchers at Israel did is that they looked at these JPEG images. They created a machine learning model, trained the model with about I think 1,500 images, out of which 2% had malware, and they broke down those images into the metadata and then extracted the features that showed where the malware was. And then when they inputted new data that it has never seen, it was able to exactly detect where the malware is within JPEG. So what I'm trying to say is that cyber attackers are getting creative now. They're not only
yeah.
putting in malware in executable files but also in image files like JPEG. So yeah, it's very interesting hearing your perspective on, how the evolution of data science also helps. It helps the good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think absolutely. I mean, until now, people have been focusing on text. Look at the application names, look at the command lines, look at the process names. But if such incidents happen, then I think, yeah, we'll probably have to also look at image data to see how to mitigate those. So as I said, it's kind of a game. So
Mhm.
if one cyber criminal did this, and now today we are talking about it as a preventive action, companies will start analyzing how to prevent them on their end. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Sounds good. The last question for today is, what was a moment in your career where you thought you were at a dead end? Maybe your career wasn't progressing as you had imagined, or maybe something that you did mistakenly, a mistake that you learned from, or a dead end, or a roadblock that you overcame, and how did you come out of that? So just an inspirational story that we're looking for.
No, yeah, I think, yeah. I actually have such a story to share, and it is without even a bit of exaggeration. So what happened is I made a career move from a different place into a new company.
Okay.
And when I made that move, due to my personal reasons, due to my personal circumstances, I made that move, and I did know in my mind that I was probably not taking a career progression, probably going at a level down, if you will. And it was an informed decision, right?
Yeah.
But after that, when once I made that move, I felt that things were probably not as good as they should be. Now, it doesn't mean that at every place you will have that experience, because in one of my previous roles, people did not work by their titles, and usually people don't work that way. But there are some circumstances where things don't work. There are priorities, right? So for example, if I'm a manager today and somebody in my team thinks that a problem should not be solved in a particular way, it is
Mhm.
my responsibility to let them try whatever they want to try. But at the same time, there is also constant pressure on my head that we have to deliver this, and we cannot keep on experimenting all the time, right? So
Agreed.
right, so due to one of those situations I was in, I felt very strongly about the approaches we were using. So now to mitigate that, or to get through that, I was initially thinking, oh, I need to find a new job. I'm not happy with what I'm doing. And because I'm generally very, very passionate about what I do.
Uh-huh.
So, and I was trying to make sure that timelines are not being impacted. But in spite of that, I noticed that I was being moved from one project to the other because of, yeah, I think the reasons were not very clear to me. So
Okay.
then what I did was I went for a mentorship session, like not outside, but within my organization, wherever I was working at that point. There
Okay.
were opportunities to apply for mentorship inside, and I went for some of those sessions. My mentor was really nice. They helped me mitigate through the situation. I discussed a lot with them on how to document things, and then
Uh-huh.
I came up with my own plan, and I reached out to my manager and I told them that, there are some things which we are not doing as we should be doing.
Right.
And my manager was very open about it, but her question was, how would you want to fix those? Like her question was, what are the problems?
Yeah.
And instead of going and telling her the problems, I told her the problems, and I told her my potential or my proposed solutions to fix those problems. And this
Okay.
did come up from a book I was reading. My mentor definitely contributed a lot to it, but there was a book I was reading, Seven Habits of Highly Productive People, or something like that was the title of that book.
I've heard of
And
it.
yeah, yeah. And at one point when I was going through that book, I was reading that book, I was thinking in my mind, is this just for saying, or do these things actually work? And I was amazed to see that these things work. I went to my manager, I went to her with the problems and the proposed solutions.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was very well received, as compared to me going and complaining and saying, oh,
Right.
this is broken, that is broken, this person is not managing the team well. I went with what I thought was not working well, and what
Mhm.
I thought could be a solution.
Right.
And yeah, because of this scenario, I think my manager was very supportive of the points I brought up. She already had seen some of those things happen,
Uh-huh.
and when an opportunity came, I was actually I was on their list, one of the top people to be promoted. And
Right.
I think it worked out very well for me in that sense. And after that, I think things did improve significantly, because now I was in a position where I could influence the decision making more than I could before, although that should not have been the case.
Right.
Uh, but now there are two lessons from this story which we should learn. One is that don't don't give up. Don't think that let me move, because I
Right.
am not a job hopper. In my previous job, I was for 4.5 years, 5 years, and before that, when I was working in India, I was in my job for at least 4 years. And
Got it.
here also at VMware, I have been 1.5 year, but I plan to continue.
Sounds
So
good.
wherever you work, I think it takes a few months to actually make an impact. You
Mhm.
cannot go somewhere and you cannot immediately say, oh, this is broken, this is not how it should be done. I came out of the college in my master's program or in my PhD, I did this thesis, and why don't you apply this to production? It's not very
Right.
simple. You cannot just go and change things in a day.
Uh-huh.
You have to give it some time so that
Right.
people understand where you are coming from. They understand that you are just not talking about the problems, you are proposing solutions. that
Right.
is that is the first lesson you have to learn, that you have to know how to navigate through these situations. And that is a lesson I learned. And the second lesson I think, which is equally important to learn, is that once you are in a controlling position, or once you are in a position where you can make a, or you can influence what others work on, try to make sure that they are happy with what they are working. Not only in terms of course you have to be respectful of their personal boundaries and
Right.
everything, but also in terms of their technical thinking process. Don't kill their thought process. Don't tell them what to do. Tell them what you want to see as an outcome. Be in constant touch with them on why doing certain things at a certain pace is important, why we cannot keep on experimenting. uh,
Mhm.
Talk them through this process instead of telling them, no, no, you have been, it's enough, let's adapt this approach. So if you start doing this, then I think people will be much more receptive to feedback, and then there will be instances when you will realize that you are learning something from the other person.
Right.
Maybe the other person who just came out from the school, maybe because they studied something cool, and maybe they're bringing a solution which you were not thinking, because you were too biased to your prior opinion, you were too biased to what the way you were doing things. So that I think is the best way to collaborate. So you don't have to establish authority, you have to earn authority. uh,
Very well said. Very well said. I completely agree with that. Very good. So, yeah, the takeaway is we will make sure that we never give up and make sure that when we provide feedback, we bring up the problem and the solution with it and make sure that people are working on things that they really, truly care about. And when coming up with solution, it's a two-way street, right? You have to earn your authority as much as you're providing authority. So,
yeah.
I absolutely agree. Thank you so, so much for all of these insights. Those were pretty much the questions that I had for today. It was amazing speaking with you. Let me know if you have any questions for me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No, I think you are a great job. A shout out to you for doing these things, taking out the time, taking an initiative, and sharing my experiences or everybody else's experiences with people who are in early stage of their career.
Right,
So if I were to mentor one person within my group or within my organization, I would
right.
impact only one person. But thanks to you, I have an opportunity to help multiple people who I probably don't even know in person. So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
shout out to you for doing this.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you so much. So let's say if in case somebody in my network comes up and says like they're interested in a career in cybersecurity or data science, they tell me that hey, I watched Raghav's video and it's amazing. I'm inspired. Can you connect me with him? Would you be open to such opportunities? Would you be open to me passing on those opportunities over to you if in case anyone reaches out?
Yeah, I think I will be happy to. I try to pay back whatever I can, given the amount of time I have. I have from time to time tried to do whatever I could.
Sure.
And if talking to me for 30 minutes, 20 minutes actually helps somebody in making the right career choices, I think I will be grateful for that opportunity.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Raghav. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today. I hope you have the rest a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.